And hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to season two. Season two of Cinemacast. And let me tell you guys something. 2024. It's so far been a hell of a year for us. With anything in the news, political, video games, movies, music, anything at all nature. It has been one of those years that has been very, well, I don't want to say immaculate, but there is a definition for the term or the word immaculate. So, welcome to season two of Cinemacast. I'm your host, Mike C. All the links you see before you on the video. If you guys haven't yet to do so, on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. Follow us on our streaming platforms, Twitch and Kick. And if you guys want to keep up with us on Twitter, go on over to Twitter. Follow us at Mike C AWAN. And we are on Discord. If you guys are on Discord, follow us over there for updates and more. So how do we start off season two of Cinemacast? With a movie that I recently come across. And this has been one hell of a disturbing movie. As I was saying, like, it's not bad disturbing, you know, in a sense. But this is a movie that you wouldn't think any different of. And of course, you know, as you could tell by the movie poster, yes, it deals with nuns. It deals with Christianity. It deals with religion. And most of all, it deals with nuns. But there is a twist to this movie. And that's why it's called Immaculate. So, getting into it, this movie just came out. It just recently came out, 2024, March. And I'm just now getting around to reviewing. I just saw it almost a month after its release, starring Sydney Sweeney. Immaculate is an American psychological horror movie that is directed by Michael Mohan, written by Andrew Lobin, and co-produced by actress Sydney Sweeney, who also stars alongside a certain cast. And this movie, the language barrier in this movie, okay, the version that I saw, there was no subtext, there was no subtitles to it, and I want to say 30 to 40% of this movie is in Italian. The language is in Italian, and there's no subtitle to the Italian speaking parts. There is mostly English. You know, there are English speaking parts for the most part, because trust me, I'm not too fond of foreign movies where the entire time you have to read subtitles to understand what's going on in a movie, because at that point you might as well just get a book. You might as well just get a book and read it, because like the last foreign movie that I've watched, and I kind of enjoyed, but it's a little too much for me because of having to read what's going on rather than, you know, understand what the characters are saying, and that was Pan's Labyrinth, which was it was a really good fantasy horror movie. I will give it that. But, you know, the entire movie is in, I think it was in German or Spanish or whatever it was. I think it was Spanish. It was all in Spanish. And you couldn't understand what they were saying. You had to read the subtitles. But that takes away from the art of that film. It takes away from the scenery. It takes away from what you're trying to enjoy cinema-wise with that movie. You know, you're paying attention to the plot, you're paying attention to the story, and it's kind of hard for some people to, you know, back and forth pay attention to what's being said and what's going on the screen. So with this movie, whether it does have subtitles to the Italian speaking parts, I have no idea, but the version that I saw, you know, there was no subtext, there was no subtitles, anything of that nature. So I just pretty much winged it, but I knew what was going on in the movie. I knew what the movie was almost pretty much about until it kind of twisted it for me. Now, before I get into this movie, the word immaculate, it originates from, you know, Immaculate Conception. And I thought it was just a title of a movie, like, you know, okay, has something to do with Christianity, of course, but I'm like, what does immaculate mean? So I looked it up. The Immaculate Conception is the belief that the Virgin Mary was free of original sin from the moment of her conception, which was she was born, she was giving birth to Jesus. It is one of the 4 Marian dogmas in the Catholic Church, debated by medieval theologians. It was not defined as a dogma until 1854 by Pope Pius. I'm guessing that's the 19th of papal bull, and I can't pronounce some of these other words. There's a lot of Christian words, Catholic words, or Italian or whatever. While the Immaculate Conception asserts Mary's freedom from original sin, the Council of Trent, held between 1545 and 1563, had previously affirmed her freedom of personal sin. The Immaculate Conception became a popular subject in literature, but its abstract nature meant that it was late in appearing as a subject in the works of art. And there's an iconography of Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception, shows Mary standing with arms outstretched and her hands are collapsed in prayer. The feast day of Immaculate Conception is December 8th. Oh, I didn't know that. So, the Immaculate Conception, December 8th. That's like, with the birth of Christ. Nobody knows when Jesus Christ was born. We all celebrate it as Christmas, December 25th. The birth of Christ. But he could have been born. I think he was born more in the summertime, or the sol. I think the solstice or the fall, however it was determined. But he wasn't born directly on December 25th. Or at least we don't know. He may have been born December 25th. We don't know. As far as we know, we just picked a random day, December 25th, to celebrate the birth of Christ, and then we brought in all this fairy tale mumbo jumbo of Santa Claus for the kids and stuff like that. So then we have the history, which is Anne, Mother of Mary, and the original sin. I'm not going to go into any of that, guys, but you guys can look that up online. There is a whole doctrine about it, and I'll cover it in another podcast for you all as well. But I just want to talk about, the fact that, this is what the movie Immaculate is. And it's based off of the concept of the Immaculate Conception. So I'm not going to go too much into the plot or synopsis of the movie, which is usually what I usually do for this type of podcast, but I want to change things up a bit, but I do want to tell you about this movie. So we follow this young Catholic or Christian woman, goes by the name Sister Cecilia, played by Sydney Sweeney. She is chosen and picked to go to this nunnery, and I think it's over in Italy somewhere. I can't remember the plot of it, but this is Sister Cecilia. She turned to Christianity when she was a young age, and you learn about what happens to her a little bit into the movie as to how and why she chose a Christian faith and why she is where she's at. And that's pretty much most of the theme of the movie, is she has her faith, but she's trying to learn where God is putting her in her place, where God wants her to be. And that is something that she is learning along the way. And it turns out, like, throughout the movie, it's almost like, yeah, this is where she's supposed to be, but it becomes a very grotesque and disturbing feeling for her. So she is greeted by, the cardinal, the priest, and the head nun of this nunnery, which is basically a place where they tend to old and dying nuns that have been around for years. They're tending to them, they're taking care of them until their last days, So it's kind of like a hospital also, in a sense. But, she's learning the faith, she's learning the ways of the nun, she's accepted, she's initiated, if you may, into this, we're going to call it a cult. We'll call it a cult, even though it's Christian. It's it's a nunnery, everything's religious, but it does have some very cult-like themes throughout this movie. And you could definitely tell from like the very beginning of the movie where you already have somebody who's trying to escape the nunnery, and you don't know why. She's just trying to escape. And then there's this group of people who follow her right before she gets to the gate and gets out and to her freedom. And they end up catching her, and then they bury her alive to die, basically. So yeah, there's already something wrong with this place, and this young girl who is turned to this faith, who wants to be, she takes her vows, and you very much learn throughout the movie what's going on until it gets to the grand master scheme toward the end. But what happens in this movie about maybe a third of the way is that it turns out that she is pregnant. Now, it's almost kind of obvious in a sense, but it's almost like it's almost a little bit too soon, or I can't put the words for it, but everything happens. There's a certain feeling that happens. Okay, there's a scene in the movie where she is shown that in this nunnery they have, or what they claim to have, is one of the original holy nails, and it's pretty much kept as a relic. It's one of the nails from the cross that nailed Jesus Christ when he was crucified. So, it's like, what is this nunnery doing with one of these original nails, and how did they get a part of it? And they got it as a sacred relic, in this place, in this nunnery. It made no sense, but it all comes together toward the end as to what is so important about this nail. But then, there's a scene where she is in it's kind of like a hot tub. She's with one of the other nuns who she's taken as a friend, and she ends up throwing up. But then it's almost like, yeah, they immediately know. They want to test her immediately. It's like, okay, she just threw up. She's not feeling good. So what is going on? But it all jumps so fast into the next part where they're like, okay, this is a sign of this and that or whatever. But it's not, I don't want to say it's subtle, but it's not too subtle. But it's almost like they know, like they're expecting it. So then they're sitting there, they're like interviewing her in a sense, asking her all these questions if she's ever had sexual intercourse with anybody before she joined. And she is just as confused as they are. But then they take her to this room where they have their own doctor on base, and then, they're doing a little sonogram and say, you are with child. So throughout the movie, this poor woman, she is being praised as like the Virgin Mary. Like it's a miracle from God. Like she is, she's never been with a guy. She's never had sexual relations. She's joined a nunnery, and all of a sudden she's pregnant. So they're like, oh my God, you're pregnant. You're still a virgin, but you're pregnant. They called her the next Virgin Mary, proclaiming that the child is a blessing. So throughout, the movie, it's like they try to do their damnedest to take care of her. They're trying to make sure that she has this child no matter what. There's even a part where she goes upon hurting herself to try to get out of the nunnery, but that doesn't work. And they keep and they're all thinking, oh my gosh, she killed the baby, or the baby died, or whatever. And they're all, and it's like, it doesn't even really die though. But that's not, it's even more disturbing details come throughout the movie, and I don't want to spoil too much for it. I know I'm already talking about the plot in it, but let's just say, like, this cultist group is doing everything they can to keep this woman alive, keep her there to give birth to what can be considered their next messiah, basically. They're like, this is a miracle. But there's an even bigger twist, that she learns toward the end of the movie, that this cult is, this cult, this group, they have been doing this for so many years, trying to find the one that can, carry what is considered the miracle, so to say, and she turns out to be the one. Well, even the priest is in on it. He turns out to be like the villain of the story and all. But there's a lot of things that that happen toward the end where, yes, she does manage to get away. She does manage to kill off everybody who is involved with the whole ordeal. But the whole story itself, it has some very disturbing takes and twists and turns to get where it ends up and toward the end. Now, I'm not going to spoil the end for you guys. I'm not going to do that unless you guys really want to look into it and look it up. Feel free to do so. But I've got to say, this movie is like a more modernized version. And I'm going to say it very loosely because this will give you guys the theme of what this movie possibly is. Like, okay, how can I go into saying that this movie is what I'm going to say it is without giving any further without you guys being like, oh, okay, I know. So I look at this movie after I watch it, and it has these Christian themes. It has the themes of this woman who bears a child. She must be protected at all costs, but then there's all this disturbing stuff that's going on, and she can't get away from it. So this movie has very subtle themes to 1968, 1969's Rosemary's Baby. Now, if you guys have never seen Rosemary's Baby, so the movie is this couple moves into this apartment. I think it was in New York somewhere. And she ends up having this nightmare one night where she is being held captive by these cultist people. And her husband's there holding her captive on the bed. She's naked. And then this being, which looks like it could be the devil, having sex with her. And she knows it feels so real, but it ends up being a dream, or so she thinks. And then the next thing she knows, she's pregnant. So the rest of the movie she's going through, she's pregnant with this child. But then she starts putting pieces together like, wait a minute, something's not right. And then at the end of the movie, they end up taking the child out of her, and it turns out to be the birth of Satan himself, So that's Rosemary's Baby, and that is the feeling, that is the theme of this movie, is it feels too much like Rosemary's Baby for a more modern generation. And that's pretty cool. It really is, because Rosemary's Baby, for its time, was a pretty disturbing movie. And it really got to a lot of people. Like when you ask people, have you seen Rosemary's Baby? And they're like, oh my God, yeah. And the movie, coming out in the 1960s for what it was, it's still a good watch. Like today, some people probably look at it as like, it's boring. It's like, oh, it's a woman with a child, carrying a baby. What's so important about it? And it's like, it's not even really that. It's the theme of the movie that really gets you. It really sets the mood. It's the theme. It's what's going on. It's like, that's why a movie like Rosemary's Baby is considered a horror movie in some aspects. Yes, it's a little bit of dramatization to it, but it's more horror based because of its religious themes and what's going on. Whereas with this movie, as they proclaim it as a psychological horror movie, it has that feeling too. It's very psychological, and this girl, she knows she's seeing what's going on, and she's piecing everything together, and it's all coming together at a fast pace within the last half hour of the movie. Now, there have been people who have said that this movie, like the ending was just like, it wasn't that great to them. They felt like, I didn't like how the ending, was left off, how the movie was left off in the end and all. But I feel like Rosemary's Baby had that ending too, that type of ending where it was like, you didn't expect it to end the way it did. And that's how this movie goes with its ending. It's like it's like you really don't want the movie to end on a note like this. you want to see what happens afterward. But I feel like the less that is shown that gives you that mysterious outcome of like, okay, what happens after? But then it cuts off. And I think, like, you know, I used to be that kind of person who looked at movies like that, where I'm like, I want more, I want to know more, I want to know what's going on, I want to know what happens to this character, that character. And I used to look at movies like that are like, oh, that's a fucking dumb ending, you know. But nowadays, as I grow more, as I get older, you know, I shouldn't say grow more. Well, I don't even know my vocabulary. As I get older, and the more movies I watch, the more movies that I take interest in, you know, a lot of older movies, and especially with horror. You know, horror is one of those arts of cinema which it's appreciated, but I feel like a lot of horror is very underappreciated for certain reasons. Like, there are horror movies out there that you could sit and watch and you can enjoy, and then there's others that are good in a sense, but when you sit there and watch it, it's like certain people sit there and watch it and you're like, I don't know. Take movies like The Witch. Okay, that movie, I sat through it, and in my mind, I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, it takes place in the woods. This girl, she's possibly a witch. You know, there's witchcraft involved and stuff. But it's like, it felt like a boring horror movie. But there's audiences out there that take appreciation to the type of art that this kind of horror is. You know, it's not about jump scares. It's not about where's the creature lurking. It's not about stuff like, you know, you see in the Conjuring movies. You know, it's something that is subtle and not really straightforward, but it's just something that you can watch and you can appreciate it for its horror themes. You know, horror, you know, it has a vast expansion, you know, within the genre, and certain people can look at a horror and say this movie is very disturbing in many different senses. You know, there's many ways that this movie can go, and it's very disturbing. You don't have to have a jump scare. You don't have to have a creature that pops out out from under the bed or something to come crawling at you. You know, horror, you know, has different themes to it, and there's a lot of different appreciations to a horror. And to me, if I find a certain movie boring, that's me. I don't know. It's just me. You know, I'm not gonna sit there and say that the movie sucks. You know, unless it really does suck. You know, unless there's something that they really did poorly on, like a movie like The House of the Dead. You know, it's a horror movie, but it's based off the video game, and it's like, how do you take a rail shooter video game, you know, from the Dreamcast era and turn it into a horror movie? You know, it's like the story wasn't all that great. I think it was a fun movie to watch, like a one-time fun, you know, one-time over kind of movie. I did watch it, but it's like, nah, it's not that great, but it was something. You know, they tried something out, and it was entertainable. You know, it was very entertainable. Now, with a movie like this, you know, Immaculate, with its themes, and I sat and I watched the entire movie, and like I said, it just gave me that distinct feeling that this is like Rosemary's Baby all throughout the movie. Basically, you know, this is basically your more modernized Gen Z version of Rosemary's Baby, and it delivers quite well. It really does. This movie delivers very well for what it is, especially, you know, when you got the critical response, you know, with all these critics rating it. You know, like the website's consensus says that Immaculate is in conception, if not always in execution, this religiously themed horror outing is saved by the divine performance of Sydney Sweeney. And you got Metacritic, who weighed in on the average, assigned it a 57 out of 100, stating that indicating mixed or average reviews. I want to get to where, okay, Tim Roby of The Telegraph awarded the film 3 out of 5 stars, saying that Sydney Sweeney's pregnant nun horror takes time to deliver. Only at the very end does it deliver, so to speak, on some of its hinted at promise. Then you got Manola Dargis, that's a weird fucking name, of the New York Times called the film a critic's pick, writing that the film is a scare fest with a plucky heroine, irrelevant hot button twist, and just enough narrative ambiguously to give viewers something to argue about. I wouldn't say argue, but the movie with its haunting score, and the score fits the movie perfectly, you know, with its religious theme, with what's going on. It does it so well. When there's music needed in certain scenes, it does it very well. And it's just, it has that feeling of tenseness. It has that feeling of horror, you know, given at the right moment. And it does it very well. And, you know, even talking about, like, the themes of the movie. And I'm going to talk about that here. So the movie addresses themes of genetic modification and debates surrounding childbirth, abortion, and infanticide. Now, for this movie to come out with the way it did and how it did, you know, for the time and being, and there could probably be some very big debate on it, because, you know, we're at a time where abortion is a thing. You know, they abolished Roe versus Wade about a year or so ago, and abortion is a very touchy subject, especially when you're trying to kill off a child, an unwanted child, for certain reasons. So this movie goes in more deeper than just, you know, feeling like a modernized version of Rosemary's Baby, you know, but the film does address themes of genetic modification and debates surrounding childbirth, abortion, and infanticide. And speaking with Fangoria magazine, director Mohan recited a story wherein the family, or within his family, stopped attending church after hearing a pro-life sermon. However, he held that the movie was not intended to have the social message. His article read, and through the film, which is at the end of the day about a forced birth by a religious institution laying claim to a woman's body, is already getting its share of blowback from certain conservative corners of the internet. I'm conservative myself, and I absolutely love this movie. I really do. I watched it twice, and I see the themes where it's going, but I'm not really bothered by it. You know, with the themes going along with its you know, religious horror theme, you know, it does it very well, I feel. Mohan is unbothered by all that. You know, I don't think it is as a problem. I think it's a necessary conversion, or conversation, I mean. And if a film can inspire that conversation, then we've done a job. Then our job is, you know, we've done our job. I'm trying to read here. But I also want to be really clear. I want the conversation to be started by the audience. I don't want them to look at us and go, look at all these social justice warriors. Mohan seems more invested in having Immaculate carry out horror's other important mission, to scaring people for life, or scarring people for life. And I feel like that's where he does it. It scars them. I don't look at this movie as a political message that talks about, you know, childbirth and all that stuff, you know, and abortion. I don't see it as that. I see the themes where it's going at. I don't see that. I see this as a movie, a terrifying movie that can scar people, in a sense, for life. Maybe not for life, but, you know, just have people talking like, oh my God, this is one of those movies that I see in my life that I can talk about for generations. Like when you're talking to your children or your grandchildren, you're like, Yeah, and you're talking about horror movies even later in your life, and you're like, oh my gosh, so I seen this one movie many years ago. It's called Immaculate, and it was about this woman who gave birth to what was said to be, the Messiah, but this and this and that happens. It's that. I feel like if a horror movie, if a true horror movie has that feeling, gives you that feeling all around, if it has you feeling like you like the movie, it scarred you for life. If it did something to you emotionally or mentally or whatever, to where you're talking about it, and this is a movie that you can either go back to watching or not go back to watching, then the people who put this movie together, they did a job well done. This was a movie that is worth seeing. It's a movie that's worth talking about. Several critics likened Immaculate to a modern revival of the nunsploitation subgenre. That's what it's called, nunsploitation. There's a lot of movies out there that deal with nuns and religion and all. So yeah, this is a more modern revival of the nunsploitation subgenre. Others noted the aesthetic and thematic influences of the 1970s European horror cinema, including directors such as Dario Argento, Mario Bava, Lucio Fulci, I guess, and Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski is the director for Rosemary's Baby. The ending of the film sees the protagonist giving birth to no, I'm not gonna spoil that for y'all, but something does happen. She does go through the full birth, but I'm not gonna spoil that for you. So that is something you guys will definitely have to check out with Immaculate. This movie, with its religious themes all around, with its what the hell do they call it? The social message, of childbirth and this and that and possible abortions and shit like that. With all those themes put together, I would definitely say go see it. Go see this movie. Don't let this so-called quote-unquote cancel culture and all these people get to you and say, nah, don't check it out. It's disturbing. It's gross. That's the kind of movie I want to watch. If it's a movie that will truly disturb you in any sense, if it's a movie that offends a certain group of people or whatever, it must be that good. It has to be that good. And this movie, for me to watch it twice and it still has a somewhat effect on me, I think this movie has the same effect on me as Rosemary's Baby did. And Rosemary's Baby came out, God, what, 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, so something like that. So that movie, as old as it is, it still has an effect on certain people if you watch it today. So I would say check out both of those movies. All right, watch Rosemary's Baby first. See what kind of feeling you get from that movie, and then check out Immaculate, and you will definitely see, almost like this. They're not trying to make the same movie. They're not trying to, copy it. They're not trying to make the Rosemary's Baby again. But it has those themes. It definitely has those themes, and it feels like a more modernized version of it. And it does it very well with its music that's very hauntingly good, and it's just the theme of it. But I would say definitely check out Immaculate, and I think I gave it on Twitter, if I remember right. I think I gave the movie an 8 out of 10 from when I watched it. I think that's what I gave it. Let me take a second here. Yes, I gave it a 9 out of 10. I said on Twitter, what's there to say about this movie? Imagine Rosemary's Baby in a nunnery. Perfect suspense and scares. Truly disturbing. Artful. 9 out of 10. That's the word I gave this movie. Artful. Very artful. And I think that pretty much describes it. That's my word for it. That's my very subtle word for it. It's very artful. It's an artful horror film. It's done very well, and it's done in a way where if you go and watch it, if you come out of the theater, it's like, wow, Like you don't know what you just watched. You don't know what you went to the theaters to see, but you're scarred. Not in a bad way, but you're scarred to where you want to watch it again, or you want to talk about it with your friends, and it's one of those movies that go see. That's all we gotta say. So anyway, guys, I'm going to end today's episode of Cinemacast. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. We are back, season 2. Can't wait to do the next. Can't wait to do the next review with you guys, because it is a definite hit, another knockout of the park. Before we end, guys, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below if you enjoy our podcast, if you enjoy any of our content on the channel. If you guys want to check out our game streams, follow us on Twitch and on Kick. Links are down below, as well as our social media links. And if you are on Discord and you want to follow us on Discord, a link for that is down below also. And one final note, today's episode of Cinemacast is sponsored by W Energy Blend Drink. Visit W.GG today. Check out what they got on their website flavor-wise. It is an energy drink. It's a powdered energy blend. And they got different products on there. They got more than 10 different flavors on the website if you guys want to check them out. If you feel free, if you want to purchase any product on the website at all, be sure to use promo code ARROW, WAN, and you will save 10% on the product. And also, if you guys want to check out our merch store, we do have merch. Link for that is down below. If you do decide to buy anything from the merch store, use promo code ARROW, ENT, and you will save 15% on any of those products. And that's it for today, guys. And until next time, until our next episode, we will catch you back here at the cinema.